In 1896, in a city named Madurai, down in South India, there lived a 16-year-old boy to whom something remarkable happened one day. He was in his uncle's study, and suddenly a deep feeling, a deep conviction came over him that he is going to die. There were no physical symptoms of this happening, but still the feeling was very strong, the fear of death. He decided to go with the flow and lie down on the floor, and a vision came in which he saw his body dying, he saw the body being carried to the burning ground and then burning. The remarkable thing was that even after all this happened, the sense of I, his existence, was still very strong, even stronger than before. And in that moment, not as a thought process, but as a flashing light of realization, he realized that he is the eternal spirit, the self with a capital S. And from that moment on, his whole life changed. He was no longer attached and involved in the drama of phenomena in the changing world. And he quickly moved to the place where I am sitting right now, to Mountain Arunachala, where he spent the rest of his life. He lived here in different caves, and he was so oblivious to the outside world that ants came and were eating his arm, scorpions came and stung him, but he didn't even notice. He was so immersed in the bliss of the self that he was just sitting for decades. Slowly people started to notice him, and more people came and gathered around him to bathe in his presence and seek his advice. And he became who we now know as Sri Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi, the great saint of India. He spent the rest of his life here at Arunachala, and people from all across the world, from different cultures, from different backgrounds, came to be with him. He was modesty and simplicity itself. All his possessions were a loincloth and a towel. He didn't have any prejudice towards people. He was unassuming, and he looked at everybody as his very own self. He was a beacon of love and compassion, and his wisdom was not coming from different philosophies, but from his very own experience. Anybody who came to him seeking his advice, he led them back into their own hearts, pointing to the self, always. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. I am staying in the ashram where Ramana Maharshi spent the last few decades of his life. And right now I'm in the guest house area because there are so many guests who want to visit the ashram that actually most of them can't stay in the actual ashram, but they build guest houses around the place. So this is one of those guest houses, and across the street is the actual ashram where Ramana Maharshi lived and still has a living presence there. All the accommodation is donation based. You get 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch and dinner, and tea in the afternoon. And in the ashram there are activities like puja in the morning and in the evening. There's reciting of the Vedas, and there's reading from the work of Bhagwan, different books in English and in Tamil. And the whole ashram is very beautiful. I think one of the most beautiful ashrams I have been to. Not just from the outside, but also from the inside. It is deeply pervaded by Bhagwan's deep, intense silence. And you sit in any of the rooms where he stayed at, and you sit down and close your eyes, and meditation just becomes spontaneous. Unfortunately, I can't show you any clips from the actual ashram because photography is prohibited. But this gave me a good teaching along the way, because I went to the president of the ashram to ask him if I could just record a few short clips, and he was very rude. And as I was talking to him, he just turned his back on me and started to walk away from me, and then yelled back, no means no, with like a kind of hatred and ill will in his voice. And I was just shocked. Suddenly, from days of peace and silence, I was thrown into a hell realm because I was just so hurt by the unkindness of another human being. And for the rest of the day I had this kind of tension in my chest, and my ego immediately grasped onto this story, and it took me quite some time to actually find my center after this happened. The way I did find my center, however, was by using Bhagwan's technique. And so let's see what that technique actually is. The technique that Ramana Maharshi encouraged everyone to practice relentlessly was the method of Atma-vichara, self-inquiry. The mind is a bundle of thoughts. The thoughts arise because there is a thinker. The thinker is the ego. The ego, if sought, will automatically vanish. Reality is simply the loss of the ego. Destroy the ego by seeking its identity. Because ego is no entity, it will automatically vanish, and reality will shine forth by itself. How the method works is actually written down on the merch of the ashram, because a little spiritual materialism never hurts. The thought, who am I, will destroy all other thoughts, and like the stick used for stirring the burning pyre, it will itself in the end get destroyed. Then there will arise self-realization. Ramana Maharshi, through this technique, encouraged us to develop discriminative wisdom, to be able to discriminate between what is the real I and what is the fake I. He says that the I that we usually refer to in everyday life, like I am angry, or I see the tree, or I am hot, is actually a false entity. And we have to seek its identity to discover that it's a false entity. And by seeking its identity, by asking ourselves, who am I, we sever the association that happens between the I and the object. Because this I, the subject, cannot exist without an object. For example, if I say I am angry, the anger is the object, and I become the subject. And there's a subject-object relationship that is being created. But by asking myself, who am I? Who is angry? I turn the attention inward and seek the identity of the ego. And since there is no such thing as an ego, it is not an entity, I will find myself in this present moment without anger. There might be anger, but I won't be angry anymore, because there's not going to be an I to be angry. The way you do this in sitting practice is through the process of neti-neti, not this, not this. So you sit down and you say, I am not the body. And then you put the I, the feeling of existence, the being, right here in the middle of your head. And you say, I am not my legs. And you experience your legs down there, and the I up here. And you go through your arms, your body, then you go through the organs of motion, then you go through the senses. I am not the hearing, for example. And then you experience yourself here as the I, and you experience hearing. And the same way when you're reading a book, and somebody walks into the room, you hear the sound, but because you are focusing on your eyes seeing, you're actually not hearing, your ears hearing. And the same way you go through your senses, I am not tasting, I am not seeing, I am not hearing. And you sever the association with all the senses, with all the limbs. It's like you're climbing up a tree and you're climbing out to a branch, and then you cut the branch from under you. Because the last one of this game is saying, I am not this thought. And then it flips. And then it flips because the intellect can't handle it. Which thought am I not? The thought I am not this thought I am not. And it's like a Zen koan, it flips you around. And if you actually have the discipline to go through all this by saying I am not this thought and severing that association, you find yourself in the Atman, in the self with a capital S. There is the absolute self, from which a spark proceeds as from a fire. The spark is called the ego. In the case of an ignorant man, it identifies itself with an object, simultaneously with its rise. It cannot remain independent of such association with objects. This association is ajnana, or ignorance, whose destruction is the objective of our efforts. And this thought, who am I, this self-inquiry process becomes an anchor in you. And anytime the attention goes out, you just ask, who is going out? Who is making this video? You have no idea how much trouble I have with making this video, because who's making the video? I'm making the video. Which I? Who is this I? Where is it? There's hearing. I'm hearing. Who's hearing? Oh, I'm feeling something here. Who's feeling? It constantly pushes you back right here. It's very similar to Vipassana, if anybody practiced that. In Vipassana, there's nowhere to stand, because objects keep appearing and you keep extricating your awareness from them. And it's very similar in this method. You just keep cutting the branch from under you to allow yourself to free fall into the Atman. And it's very interesting that in Buddhism, there is a term anatta, which means no self. And in this case, we are talking Atman, the true self. And so the realization of anatta, the realization of that there's nobody home, that there's nobody here, is the realization, self-realization, the realization of Atman in this case. Because you find that there's no entity there. And it's very difficult what is there, because since you're not this and you're not that, that's the whole point of the method. Like, who is there? You're so used to putting ourselves into a concept. This is who I am. This is what I'm doing. So you can't describe what you find once you ask the question, who am I? There's just not even that. You can't describe it. And that's why it's referred to as anatta, as no self, because it's not a thing. You can't find anything there. Ramana Maharshi said that your duty is to be, not to be this or that. So the method, the whole method, is a process of severing the relationship between the subject and the object. And once you sever that relationship, everything becomes subject. There is no experiencer anymore, there is just experience. And ultimately, this is the point of all spiritual practices, that there's nobody home anymore. There is this old Taoist story about a fisherman who went out in the morning to fish, but there was a great fog and he couldn't see anything. And suddenly another boat bumps into his. And he yells out, "Oh, don't you see where you're going?" But he didn't see anybody there because of the fog. And then the fog cleared out, and it was just an empty boat that bumped into his. And there was nobody there. And all that anger of, "Oh, don't you see where you're going?" was just gone. Suddenly there was nobody there to point the anger to. How far out it would be if it turned out that there was never anyone in the boat. Not even in this one. This is where Bhagavan moved shortly after he left his home, and he lived here for 17 years. And this one behind me is the other ashram that people can visit, where Ramana meditated, and this one is called Skanda Ashram. It is enough that one surrenders oneself. Surrender is to give oneself up to the original cause of one's being. Do not delude yourself by imagining such source to be some God outside you. One's source is within yourself. Give yourself up to it. That means that you should seek the source and merge in it. Because you imagine yourself to be out of it. You raise the question, where is the source? The experience of doing this practice of self-inquiry, it feels like a big offering, a big sacrifice, a big swaha into the world. You keep surrendering yourself to what is. You keep surrendering your melodrama, your story. Because by asking, who am I? This search brings you straight to the present moment. And it turns out that in the present moment, you have no personality. You're not somebody. It turns out that who you think you are is really just a huge bag of past impressions that you keep carrying with you. And based on those impressions, everything that happened in the past, you perceive this present moment through the prism of this personality. But once you ask the question, who am I? There's no one here. And you keep surrendering yourself to your higher self into this moment. You keep offering your melodrama, your storyline, into the mouth of Brahman, if you want to call that. Into the mouth of everything that is. Into the present moment. One of the difficult things about the spiritual path that most people don't want to hear is that you have to give up your suffering, which is a pretty big thing. Gurdjieff said that this is the first step you have to take if you want to walk on the path. Ramakrishna said that if you have a sad face, you better stay home until you get better and don't bring that outside to show it to other people. And it's incredible to see how much our personality comes from our suffering, from our problems, from our story. And this is the way most of our lives run. We run based on problems. It's interesting, I find myself in conversations and I don't know what to talk about because I just feel like this moment is perfect. And when you actually experience the perfection of this moment, because this moment is perfect. I know about all the suffering that's going on in the world and all the injustice and all the terrible things, but this moment is perfect because it includes everything within it. And the reason why you don't see it as perfect is because you're busy standing somewhere. But the moment you are present, that means that you're not standing anywhere. You gave up your ground. And when you're standing nowhere, you can perceive the perfection of this moment. But when you do that, it's very difficult to have conversations with other people. Because what do you say? It's like, here we are. You know? All our social game is so much based on us having issues, us having challenges, us having to solve problems. And the same thing that happened with me in the ashram. There was a little argument and immediately my ego grabbed onto it. And I was holding onto it for like a whole day. And it was so thick, the melodrama of me being the victim, of judging, of the wow, it's like baklava, so rich. But then at the end, I asked, who is it that's suffering? And there was no one there. And so it was given up. It was given up into the sacrificial fire that is this moment. Literally. And Ramana Maharshi is one of those beings who can help you give up your storyline. Give up your ignorance if you're actually curious about what else is there. Because he is one of those beings who is here. Like really here. He's not here at Arunachala or in his ashram or in his statue, or he didn't live in the past. But there are few beings on this earth who have given up themselves so much, their past, their future, that they are right here. They are here and now. And once a being is here and now, they don't leave. They're just here waiting for you, offering you all the help they can give to bring you here as well. And so, you know, maybe after you finish watching this video, just look at his picture for a while. And maybe just every day look at the picture for a little bit. And just hang out. This is not serious. It's not like, oh, I have to give up my melodrama. Oh, I have to get enlightened. Oh, who am I? You know, it's not that serious. It's just, he's here. He's really here. And you can just hang out. It's not a bad thing to do. Just for a few minutes every day, just look at the picture. And he's gonna be right there with you.